When you look at a North Korean military parade, you see a lot of stern faces. But if you look closely, you might spot a woman with a quiet, almost gentle smile. She doesn't exactly scream threat, and yet a lot of experts are calling her the most dangerous woman in the world. Her name is Kim Yo Jong, sister of the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. So, how does someone like her get a reputation like that? Let's get into it.
To really wrap your head around her, you have to realize you're looking at two different people in one. On one hand, you've got the charming diplomat. She was the face of North Korea at the Winter Olympics, all smiles, shaking hands, and really softening the regime's image. But then you flip the coin, and you get the tyrant's attack dog, the one who issues threats about nuclear war and throws around insults that are just brutal. So the big question is, which one is the real Kim Yo Jong? Or maybe the scarier answer is, they both are.
So let's start there. With that dangerous smile, we're going to track her incredible rise from being just a quiet assistant in the background to, well, the potential heir to the throne. How in the world did this happen right under everyone's noses? For years, that's all the world saw. She was just a shadow, always in the background of these high-stakes meetings. You'd see her passing documents, sorting out logistics. There was that one famous time she was seen holding an ashtray for her brother while his train was stopped. To the outside world, she was just an aide. And you know what? That was a huge miscalculation.
To really get who she is, we have to rewind the clock. We need to go back to her childhood, which was spent almost completely hidden away from the world. This is the story of the invisible princess, who was being groomed for power from the very beginning.
I mean, think about how strange this is. She gets sent to a fancy school in Switzerland for a Western education, right? But she's living there under a fake name, with bodyguards watching her every move. She was in the West, but she was never, ever free. So when she finally popped up in public at her dad's funeral in 2011, it felt like she came out of nowhere. But for the people in charge, she'd been getting ready for this her whole life.
After her father died, she didn't just get a seat at the table. No, she made a very calculated climb right to the top, where she could control the regime's single most important tool, its propaganda machine.
And boy, did she move fast. When she was just 23, she basically became her brother's chief of staff, planning his travel, his security, everything. A couple years later, boom, she's the vice director of the propaganda department. That's North Korea's Ministry of Truth. By 2015, she was pretty much running the entire show. And by 2017, her power was so obvious that the US government officially put her on its sanctions list.
See, her main job wasn't just about managing schedules. It was about manufacturing a legend. She took total control of the country's story and started deliberately shaping her brother's image. We're talking his haircut, his clothes, the way he stood. It was all designed to make him look and feel like their grandfather, the founder of the country, Kim Il-sung. She wasn't just his sister anymore. She was the architect of his godlike status.
So for years, she was the master puppeteer, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. But then, in 2020, a crisis hit. It created a power vacuum, and Kim Yo Jong decided it was her time to step into the spotlight, revealing a side of her that stunned the entire world.
It all kicked off when Kim Jong-un just disappeared, vanished from public view for weeks, and every intelligence agency on the planet went into a frenzy. Was he sick? Was he dead? North Korea is such a black box, so nobody knew anything. The whole world was just holding its breath, wondering who on earth was in charge.
And then, out of that total silence, a statement comes out. And it's the first one ever issued in Kim Yo Jong's name. Now, you'd think it would be about her brother's health, right? Nope. Instead, she just unleashes this incredibly vicious attack on South Korea, calling them a dog yelping in fear. The language was just shocking. It was brutal and completely unprecedented for her.
Look, this wasn't just some random insult. This was a message to the world. She was signaling to everyone, from the generals in Pyongyang to the White House, that there was no power vacuum. She was in control. So when Kim Jong-un finally did reappear, her position was stronger than ever. She had proven she wasn't just an advisor. She was the regime's Iron Lady.
So with her power now out in the open, people started looking back, connecting the dots on some pretty dark stuff. And a trail of brutal actions began to be linked to the woman who was once just a shadow behind the throne. Yeah, a really disturbing picture starts to take shape. She's allegedly one of the masterminds behind the execution of her own uncle, for not clapping hard enough, if you can believe that. It's widely believed she was involved in the assassination of her half-brother at that airport in Malaysia, and in 2020, she's the one who gave the order to literally blow up the Joint Liaison Office, a building that was supposed to be a symbol of peace with South Korea.
And her ferocity isn't just for family rivals.
She publicly called the President of the United States an old man with no future. That kind of direct, personal insult, that was usually something only the Supreme Leader himself would say.
And what about the people from her own country who managed to escape? Oh, she calls them scum and filthy dogs, and promises they'll pay a terrible price for leaving. You see, for her, the cruelty isn't a side effect, it's a tool. It's how she projects power.
Okay, so you add all this up, her mastery of propaganda, her absolute ruthlessness, the public threats, and it all leads to one single critical question. Is she the heir apparent to the world's most terrifying dictatorship?
I mean, just look at her position today. Her official title is still related to propaganda, but in reality, she is the de facto number 2. She sits on the State Affairs Commission. That's the absolute highest level of government. And she's issued more than 40 official state proclamations in her own name. That used to be a privilege only for the Supreme Leader. She's become the official mouthpiece for the entire nation.
You know, history's had its share of ruthless female rulers. You'd think of people like China's Empress Wu or Bloody Mary in England. They had armies, they executed their rivals. But Kim Yo Jong has weapons they could only have dreamed of. She has a totally sealed-off state where she controls every single piece of information, a massive personality cult built for her family, and of course the one weapon none of them ever had, the nuclear button.
So the stakes here really could not be higher. She has proven that she's brilliant, that she's ambitious, and that she's capable of being absolutely ruthless. The woman once dismissed as a simple aide now stands as a potential dictator with her finger on that nuclear trigger. Which leaves us with one last, pretty chilling question. If her brother falls, is the world even remotely ready for what comes next?